me sometimes to say like, oh, this website says that they know the exam and the reading is going to be about this and the writing is going to be about this. And it was never, ever, ever correct. So don't waste your time with that type of stuff for your clients. Another issue that can come up is, I don't know if you've ever heard of impersonators. So someone in a certain place or whatever can kind of hire an impersonator to go take the exam for them. Have you ever heard of that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
An impersonator or yeah, I believe so. I haven't heard of a story, but I've read about it. Yes.
Yeah, that's it. So I've heard stories about this too. And
Hmm.
here in Canada, I mean, it's never an issue. I've heard of a certain country where this stuff apparently happens. But again, it's so incredibly unlikely that the person would get away with it because,
Yeah.
of course, when this person shows up to the exam, first of all, we're all trained in in fraudulent passports, all that type of stuff. We bring people aside often to ask them kind of more questions about themselves if we're unsure about if the person is actually the person. If they don't have extra ID, if they're missing some stuff like that, if it's not sure that the person is the person on the passport, we send them home and ask them to get more information or that kind of thing. It happens every once in a while. Um, and another thing is, of course, you have the person's finger scan, you have
Exactly.
their picture, you have the recording of the speaking test. And if there's an issue, so let's say that, and of course, remember the officers as well. The officers, the CPSA, like they know what they're doing. And if somebody shows up at the port of entry and they say, "Hey, I'm going to go study at the University of Toronto because I was accepted," or they show up and they say, "Oh, I'm a federal skilled worker," and the person doesn't speak English. I mean, the officer will, of course, the officer can detain that person. He doesn't have to let this person in, right? And he can, of course, verify those records. There's also an internal sort of system with some of those numbers on the TRF itself, where they
Yeah.
can log in and see this person's actual score, and they can see the TRF, right? So the TRF has this person's picture 100% clear on it.
Correct.
If it's
Yeah.
not this person, well, what happens? Do you know?
Yeah. Of course, a rejection or a return back to your home country.
Oh, and misrepresentation, 5 years, right?
Yes.
So
Absolutely.
yeah. So people who think, I've had this. I had an experience with this when I was in Australia working. Actually, I was teaching at a university, and we had a couple students there from, I think it was Vietnam, and same thing. They were caught with fraudulent with fraudulent. I don't think it was IELTS though. I think it was a different exam that the university used, and same thing. So these people, they paid, I don't know how much money for their university, and they got kicked out, and they couldn't speak English anyways, right? So they were going to fail their university course
Mm.
anyways. So for the people watching this, if you have clients who think that they can do this, if they think that, oh, there's a company that sells these reports, you had better tell them to really stay clear of this. Inform them that they are absolutely going to get caught 100%. You won't be able to represent them if they choose to do this, of course. And of course, it will almost certainly result in a misrepresentation. And of course, is it enough to just say this to a person?
Of course not.
No. Well, what do you have to do? Put it in writing.
uh,
Send them an email, right?
yeah.
With it after you have
Yeah.
that
Exactly.
conversation. Yeah. Always, always, always get this in writing because you'll see this is something that Andrew talks about a lot in his classes as well, and it's something we talk about. Yeah, I mean, a lot. If you talk with any RCIC, they'll tell you that people who are willing to do this kind of thing, people who are willing to cheat and scam and that sort of thing, first of all, you don't want them as clients. Personally, if I ever had somebody who came up to me with this type of plan, I wouldn't take this person as a client. If they paid the retainer already, I would just refund the retainer, cancel the contract, wish them a good life, and that would be it because you don't know what else they're trying to cheat on, right? So
Exactly.
that's kind of the way that I work, the way that we work over here. A lot
Yeah.
of companies would do the same thing, just because this is somebody who is going to get in trouble for sure, unless they just didn't know, right? But I don't know. I think a situation like that's a bit obvious, right? And then, of course, the first thing they'll do when they get in trouble is they will say whose fault is it? Do you think they'll say,
Oh,
no,
the consultant told me
oh
so.
yeah, that's exactly it, right? So,
Yeah,
anyways, when you have all of that by email, you send them, okay, as we discussed today,
exactly.
this, then you're covered. And of course, if they still want to carry on with this type of thing, you're bound, of course, by the ICCRC Code of Ethics, by the regulations, by everything
Sure.
to obviously withdraw from this and inform them, of course, that, well, this is illegal and it's not the way to do things.
Yeah.
Okay, have you ever heard of any other kind of situations involving IELTS?
Not really, except that some people may say that certain locations you can get better scores out of. So some actually clients travel abroad, or they because they have access to two different countries. For example, they say, okay, we may go and take the IELTS in a different country. We can get a higher score because of the average scores, or people who are taking the same exam with us. You know, we can score a higher mark in the IELTS. So I'm not sure if that's also something that's true or not. If there's a standardized kind of correcting an exam in each location, or they're different, they can vary.
No, it's worldwide, right? So it's the standardization is worldwide. It's the same exam. So in terms of the score, the scoring system, it's the exact same. Personally, I've been an examiner in Australia, Colombia, all across Canada, and I think I'm missing one, Philippines. And really, it's the exact same. The examiners are the same. The examiners are kind of the same people anyways, like they move
Yeah.
around and that sort of thing. And and the standardization is absolutely the same in every single country. So sometimes for an examiner, they'll have, let's say an examiner in China, for example, will have a lot of Chinese candidates, and they might do some extra training actually for Chinese candidates, common errors and that type of thing. And other places like here in Canada, when I'm examining, I mean, I'll get candidates from everywhere, really. And of course, like we said before, remember we talked about maybe an Arabic speaker versus a Korean speaker,
Yes.
and how sometimes they'll get a similar score, even though the performances were pretty different. It's sort of the same thing, really. So you'll have people, I mean, if someone takes an exam in one city or one center, the examiners are often the same anyways. Like for myself, sometimes I'll work at an IDP center. Sometimes I'll work at a British Council center. And then I read online sometimes they'll say, yes, the IDP centers are easier. And it's not true. It's the same examiners,
Mm-hmm.
same
Mm-hmm.
examiners,
Yeah.
same exam, same everything. Just just kind of the organization running it is a little bit different. But even for them, I mean, all the standards are the exact same thing. So nope, no
Okay.
difference
Yeah.
at all. Even if people, and for people watching this too, I have this sometimes too with people um, where sometimes someone taking an exam will say, "Oh, I flew in from Toronto to take the exam here because there's more French speakers." So I think
Mm-hmm.
because I'm an English speaker, people will the examiner might think it's a better performance, and no, it's there's no difference at all. Some of the examiners up here come from Toronto to examine anyway, so there's really no difference at all. So tell your clients if they have that idea to save their money, because it's going to cost them maybe thousands of dollars that they could have spent on lessons, that they could have spent on a real method to help them get the score they need.
Okay. Yeah.
Great. So yeah, good talk there. And I think that these
Mm-hmm.
are a lot of misconceptions that come up with exams in general. Did you hear the story from England about because the outcome of this is horrific, really. When people cheat on these exams, first of all, I mean, they're not going to be able to survive if they're taking a course, a university program or something like that in Canada, and they don't have that English ability. Well, they're going to fail out of university anyways. In England, there was a big story from a couple of years ago of people who were taking the TOEIC or TOEFL, I don't remember which one. I think it was
Mm-hmm.
TOEIC, and they were cheating. It was an organization that was sort of cheating with them, where they had people would pay for someone else to take the exam for them, basically. And they got caught. It was an undercover reporter who had a camera who surveyed the whole thing. The organization got caught, and what do you think happened to these hundreds and hundreds of people who took this exam?
Well, they lost their money, that's for number one.
Money, but it's not only the exam money, right? It's the money they spent trying to immigrate because they were all subject of hearings because of misrepresentation.
Yeah, it will cause them hard times to try to apply for any immigration. Maybe not just Canada then, any other country.
Yeah, absolutely, because everything's linked too, right? From the Five Eyes, so they know. I mean, if someone, the officers, if they research a person's name and this person is subject to, well, this person committed misrepresentation in England, I mean, they know, right? So it makes everything way, way, way more difficult. I think people thought it was an easy solution.